Minnesota is a state that I don't think ever got its own video, so for all my Minnesotans out there, shout out to you. Currently, 2 Amtrak routes serve the Twin Cities along with its respective suburbs. The Borealis, which runs a daily round trip to Chicago and back, and the Empire Builder, which is a daily long-distance train between Chicago and Seattle. At St. Paul's Union Depot, you can make connections to the Metro Transit's Green Line light rail to Target Field. Minnesota used to have much more abundant train routes pre-Amtrak, being run by railroads like the Burlington route, the Chicago Northwestern, the Rock Island, the Chicago Great Western, and the Great Northern, to name a few. Trains used to go to places like Fargo, North Dakota, and Winnipeg, Manitoba from St. Paul. Point is, the Twin Cities was once a massive hub for long-distance train travel. Now there's only 2 remaining. Post-Amtrak though, a few routes still served Minnesota before getting cut and or merged into longer routes. One of which is called the Northstar. Cool name, right? Let's talk about it. This story actually dates back to the Great Northern Railroad pre-Amtrak. The Great Northern ran a route called the Gopher, which will get its own video eventually. The Gopher ran between St. Paul and Duluth on a single daily round trip, serving very limited stops in between. It was cut in 1971 upon the arrival of Amtrak, but the route was succeeded with Amtrak's Arrowhead service, which ran basically the same route. However, the Arrowhead didn't begin service until 1975. The Arrowhead was rather short-lived and was cut in 1978 due to a schedule conflict a year prior, resulting in the entire timetable being flipped upside down, with the train departing Minneapolis in the morning and coming back in the late evening, preventing people from getting a same-day connection to a Chicago-bound train. To add insult to injury, the Arrowhead was the last train to serve Minneapolis' Great Northern Depot, and any services after that were supposed to serve St. Paul's Midway station instead. This major change thus birthed today's star route, pun intended, the Amtrak Northstar. The Northstar was actually a combo of 2 former routes, the Twin Cities Hiawatha and the Arrowhead service. The Twin Cities Hiawatha ran daily between Chicago and Minneapolis, and the Arrowhead continued on to Duluth from there, giving Duluth a daily Amtrak service once again. The Northstar was actually a sleeper train, funnily enough. It would leave Chicago at night and arrive at Duluth the next morning, making a lot more stops than usual. Equipment used on the train was usually an EMD F40PH locomotive leading the train, and a fair amount of either Amfleet coaches or high levels from the Santa Fe trailing behind. The Northstar ran between Chicago and Duluth, Minnesota, making several stops in between. Leaving Chicago's Union Station, it continued northbound to serve Glenview, Sturtevant, Milwaukee, Columbus, Portage, Wisconsin Dells, Toma, La Crosse, Winona, Red Wing, St. Paul's Midway Station, Cambridge, Sandstone, Superior, and finally arriving at Duluth's St. Louis County Depot. The total route length came out to 573 miles, running on a single daily round trip. If on time, each run would take a bit over 13 hours, giving the train an average speed of about 44 miles an hour. Not that impressive. Anyway, the train numbers were 9 going north and 10 going south. The Northstar's route was shared by 3 other Amtrak services according to Bruce Goldberg's book, Amtrak the First Decade. The Empire Builder, which was quad weekly at the time, used this route to get into North Dakota. The thrice-weekly North Coast Hiawatha between Chicago and Tacoma also used the same route to get onto tracks used by the former Northern Pacific Railroad. There was also a daily turboliner set that used the route up until Milwaukee. The Empire Builder became daily in 1979 when the North Coast Hiawatha was discontinued. Unfortunately, keeping this route running became a challenge by 1981, as by then, severe budget battles happened involving it. Because of cost cuts, the Northstar was cut to run as a local between Duluth and St. Paul, causing the Empire Builder to be the only daily connection to Chicago. By now, its only intermediate stops were Cambridge, Sandstone, and Superior. As far as I know, no efforts were actually made to link the timetables to make for a stable connection to the Empire Builder. By now, the Northstar ran on a 3.5-hour trip to the Twin Cities and back. It died for a short amount of time in '82 due to Amtrak quite literally begging Minnesota's government for the money to continue running it with its current schedule. By now, it ran on the weekdays as a peak-hour train, and it also ran on the weekends. Things remained stagnant until around 1984, when it was decided to cut Superior from the Northstar's route, making the trip ever so slightly quicker, but taking away Superior's only daily train. By 1985, the decision was made to cut the Northstar from service completely due to lack of funding. The final run was made in April of that year, leaving towns north of the Twin Cities region with basically no other way to get into the city other than driving. The Northstar was a lifeline to Minnesota's northern communities. It's quite a shame it wasn't funded nearly enough to last until the 90s at least. The only train to serve St. Paul was the Empire Builder for the next 3 decades. Midway Station closed in 2014, and all Amtrak services shifted to the present-day St. Paul Union Depot. In 2009, the Twin Cities Metro Transit launched a new commuter line called the Northstar, funnily enough, but it didn't run all the way to Duluth. Instead, it runs on an extremely infrequent schedule. It doesn't even begin at Union Station, but instead it begins at Target Field, which is the terminus of the Green Line light rail. As of right now, the Northstar Line runs as a peak hour commuter service, running 40 miles northwest between Target Field and Big Lake. There are currently 4 trips a day in each direction, operating during the weekday rush hours. Now it's on the verge of being cut from service, and my friend was lucky enough to ride it and grab footage of it on its deathbed. More recently, however, Amtrak launched their new Borealis service, but still not to Duluth. Instead, it runs a single daily round trip to Chicago and back. But Amtrak did propose for the Borealis to be extended ever so slightly to terminate at Target Field, providing easier connections to the Northstar Line and the light rail. They've also proposed a higher speed route to Duluth called the Northern Lights Express. The Northern Lights Express is a route that's projected to have upwards of 4 daily round trips and a top operating speed of 90 miles per hour. So long as the tracks north of St. Paul get upgraded. The route will follow basically the entire route of the former Northstar, with all 4 stops being proposed to be reactivated, along with adding an extra 2 at Coon Rapids and Hinckley, with an available connection to the Northstar Line at Coon Rapids, if it's still around by then. As of right now, this route is still in the planning stages, so we could only hope. As I always say, we have to let time do its work. Amtrak's Northstar was an ill-fated sleeper train between 2 major Midwestern cities that wasn't funded nearly enough to last until the 90s. It was only until 3 decades after the train's last run when people wanted to bring back service along its route. But hey, it's better than nothing. The Twin Cities do still have train service, albeit a little lackluster, with only a few Amtrak trains and commuter trains per day, but as said before, it's better than nothing. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, you can always like, subscribe, do whatever, I don't really care. Thanks a lot for watching, and a special shout out to my friend Naomi for providing the Northstar Line footage. I hope to see you in the next video. Have a good day.